very, very pleased to have Ben on, and it's a very exciting subject matter to get into. I was promoting this webinar earlier, and an architect, came back to me and said it's surprising how little is being talked about the Building Safety Act at the moment. And as you rightly pointed out to me, Ben, recently, is that it's now a criminal offence to not be compliant with the Building Safety Act, and it's quite contentious out there. So I thought it'd be a fantastic opportunity to have you on, Ben, to find out a little bit more about you, about One Stop
Yeah.
Consult, and maybe just give us a bit of a run through of how it's operating, what it means for builders, contractors, developers, and what we can do to be a bit more diligent and understand the Building Safety Act a little bit better. So, what I like to do with these webinars, Ben, is I like to take it right back to the start. I like to take
Right.
it right back to your beginning of your property journey,
Okay.
before you founded One Stop Consult. And really, what was it that got you into property? How did you start out?
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having us on today. It's a privilege to be asked to come forward and support what you're doing with your business, and also help share information to what you've got, a growing community of people that are in property. So my journey comes back to started in 2013. So I had a window of time where I didn't know what I was going to do career path wise. I was supposed to be doing motorsport, and yeah, it just sort of, my dad said to me, he was involved with building regulations, from following on from being a site manager. He did his degrees in construction management and joined NHBC, which is the National House Building Council, which they provide building control and they do warranty. And my dad worked for them for over 10 years, and then during the recession was made redundant. So he ended up being an individual building inspector, sort of in the private market, and effectively joining, in building regulations. You can have a private approved inspector, or also known now as a registered building control approver, or you can use the local authority building control. So it's a public sector service and a private sector service. So it's quite an interesting. It's quite interesting. It's a bit like you could classify it like NHS private healthcare, or you use the local place. So sometimes you find that there's more benefits using private over and above using the public service, but it comes at a cost. So yeah, so I joined my dad while he was running a micro business, whereby he was looking after builders and clients with building control, and it was an administration role initially, just to help coordinate the growing work that building inspectors have to do in order to manage and document control, check, approve. So there's a lot of coordination with, there's a lot of document management, I would suggest. And literally, I got involved with this computer systems that he was operating under, the building control firm he was working for. And lo and behold, it was like, well, actually, it was more the digital evolution of how people work. So it was like, well, hang on a minute, I can come out in the car, I can do some site inspections with him, understand construction, and really it just started from there. And so I was going out every day. We was doing lots of inspections of different projects and learning about construction. And after a few years of doing that, there was an opportunity to self-fund a qualification, because I was able to be observed on site. I was able to get around these sites with my dad. So effectively, I was becoming a trainee building inspector or an assistant building surveyor. So it was fantastic, to do that with my dad, and I did the qualification, and from 2013 to about 2016, I was then a level 3 site inspector. But I was dealing with commercial relationships with clients, building on on them relationships, ensuring that we were giving the service that they were, because we have to sell the service, because we're more money than a public sector, which is obviously non-for-profit service funded by the taxpayer. So trying to explain to clients why would they spend more money to work with us, and the service sort of sang for itself, really, because of the added value that you get from being able to pick up the phone, being able to communicate with someone directly. And I think that while I was on that journey, Chris, it quickly came to me that I was coordinating a lot of services for customers, services that they weren't aware of. And in the end, I just thought, well, I might as well create a business, a bit like your one-stop shop convenience store, because it made sense that everything that we were trying to do could be operated under one roof. It was of benefit to the customer, because they wanted really a vetted supply chain. They didn't want to be just, a lot of people go on Google and they find they're using different service providers, and costs can differ drastically. So I obviously came up with this name with my dad in the car, and we went for it. So we launched One Stop Consult, and from day one, I already had the digital things that we were evolving. People were coming up with apps in order to do the inspection work. A bit like, very much interested in obviously what the business that you're doing. Digital media focused. I mean, look, we can communicate, anywhere in the world, and we can connect through here. So I basically did the one-stop shop or the one-stop consult idea, and the engine really is the portal system that I self developed. So, I thought it all out, writ everything down that I wanted it to do. And the idea with that was to actually pass it on to our clients and say, you operate that system, you run your own projects, and we just become a subscription. Because obviously you can see that there's that model that exists with subscription businesses, and a lot of people are doing that. But the clients didn't want it. They wanted me, they wanted the coordination. So in turn, it just made it more effective, because the business has got value in it in terms of the clients that it serves, in terms of the existing client base, and also the partnerships and the discounted supply chain. But they really want somebody else to steer that operation. So we've got all of that in place now, and that's now actually become the golden thread, because it's all about document management, tracking, and understanding who's making what decisions. And I think that if you can have a platform that connects the suppliers to the project, then that's how it's sort of gone, really. Because since what's gone on with Grenfell and the introduction of the Building Safety Act, which is what we were getting into, we've had to move with the times as a business, and we created a business for the people, to make their life a little bit easier and make it more transparent as to what they actually need to do. Because a lot of builders will just look at a building plan and just say, well, when can I build it? They're not looking at is everything designed properly? Has it been checked by somebody else? Does it actually comply? So I think that all we've tried to do is support our builders and our customers, with the right information, the right support. And then if we can bring the supply chain that can deal with a lot of it and add value, a lot of the work that we do is affecting the fabric of buildings, the actual buildability. It's no good just having a massive steel beam across, for an extension. Well, has anyone thought about how they're going to get it around the back of the house? So we look at practical solutions, and like I say, I did the One Stop Consult name just to give it a bit of a one-stop shop. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been challenging, with the market affecting. I would say that the government, the inflation and all of these things that affect, the budget. If the gross development value doesn't stack up, then it puts people off. So I think we've created a really good business that's, you call us almost like a compliance coordinator, supporting developers, making sure that they've got everything designed and locked in, and the portal system that we've got is fantastic because it's connected direct to our supplier. So, we can pull up anything that we've done on the project at the click of a button. We can get a design change if there's a design change very quickly. Because it's got its own chat box. So, it's all well thought out so that people can't delete certain things and stuff, and it's specific to me and the supplier. So in order to, if anyone was to look at the golden thread digital pathway of how buildings are designed, built, and then managed, you're talking about the next part, which is the life cycle of the building and those accountable people. So we're very robust, and we've actually developed our own system before golden thread was even a thing. So in terms of the golden thread, it started following the Grenfell fire that had happened, the tragedy, and there was a public inquiry, and there was a lady called Dame Judith Hackett who did the inquiry, and they found that they found that there was a lot of areas that it was totally avoidable. There was a lot of things that could have prevented this happening, and so they've introduced the Building Safety Act in 2022 following that inquiry. And what that means is, it means that they've formulated some new bodies under the Building Safety Act. So it's become criminal law that obviously you need to have duty holder positions. So when you do a building project, there's 3 people that you need to put in certain positions. So I look at it as if you've got a steering wheel on a car. The client is driving the steering wheel, and they're onboarding the duty holders themselves. So that would be the principal designer and the principal contractor. So what that means is, it means that those declarations, they've got actual accountable people. So the contractor will do the building work, and the principal designer will do the design and oversee and ensure that it's compliant with the building regulations. And depending on what level of principal designer role you are, then you'll be obliged to go to site and make sure that that it's being built in accordance with your design as well. But it's predominantly affected. It's affected under the bodies that have been implemented. You've got something called the Building Safety Regulator. Okay, so a lot of people are not, or they don't know about it. A lot of clients, they don't even understand. They don't know what building regulations are. I mean, what building regulations are is a regulatory body to enforce. Well, it's a regulatory body so that people can work to the regulations that are set there. Yeah, which is all across. It's basically like a dictionary. You've got A to S. So they just keep bolting on some things in there. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that we're trying to help you, inform you at the beginning of a project, that you will need to understand what the new changes are, what the requirements are, and that when it comes down to a building project, you need to understand that people need to be aware of what works are notifiable that come under building regulations. So if you're going to change an internal layout of a flat, then you could be affecting the fire strategy for the existing, for what it was, which then means that it's notifiable work. You might be putting a new toilet in, you might be whatever work you're doing. If it does fall under building regulations, if it requires building control approval, then there's a process where you have to make application to a private inspector, or what we call now a registered building control approver, and then you also got the local authority. So there's a process that you need to follow to make sure that you're getting that work checked key stage inspections, and it's very important. I think that, the local, well, the government and the council, they are probably going to be coming down on it quite harshly regarding enforcement of building works that have been going on that aren't regulated. So some people will just say, well, I didn't know how to do it. Well, the ones that say they didn't know how to do it, hold your hands up, you're just being honest. I think that they're looking at, the criminal law that's wrapped around it now. I think that, you have a duty to ensure that you're following the right process. It's like again, using the steering wheel on a car and you're onboarding the passengers. You won't go out on the road, without making sure you're insured, making sure you've got, all the right things in place. And it's the same for a building project. There's certainly a lot more. I think it's just resources. If they had more resources in local authority, or they opened up the enforcement to the private sector, you'd see a lot more going on in that.
Well, Ben, you touched on sort of how you guys operate, and what I really love about working with you guys is that you are, every time I speak to you, you're very empathetic to the struggles that developers go through in terms of trying to get these projects over the line, and balancing that with the professionalism of trying to make sure that they're doing the right thing and with upholding standards. But I mean, you must see on a regular basis sort of the common mistakes that developers are making on a regular basis in terms of not hitting the building regs or not thinking something's building regs. Is there sort of is there one that you sort of almost roll your eyes at because you've been out to it so often, that you see on a regular basis where the developer didn't realize that it needed building regs, or that it should have been signed off appropriately?
Absolutely right, Chris. Absolutely right. Because the subject area, it can get, what I was talking about, it can get confusing. But I would just recommend that people just do a soft research on the application process. If you're a HMO developer, or you're doing an extension, or you're doing new build housing, get familiar with it, and make sure you've got your ducks in line, really, because you don't want to be in a position, what you just mentioned, where builders say that they've come to the end of the project, or the customers coming to us. We had one last week where we got an inquiry, that referral, and they said that they've changed a two bed, one bathroom flat into a three bed, three bathroom. So with no extension, and they've had no building control on it. So I'm like, well, the only opportunity to move forward with that is regularisation, which is a local authority. You've got a local authority that are very backlogged with a lot of work, because they're the only people that can regularise projects. We've had the collapse of, one of the biggest building control approvers in the country, which has caused, thousands of projects that have got to go back to local authority to be regularised. But the biggest thing with the biggest problem in construction is, I think that everything being coordinated, having that one person to coordinate, and having somebody that says that's good to build, foundations first always. But it generally comes down to not understanding the paperwork that you need to have in place that dictates compliance. So let's look at SAP calculations, which comes under BREL, so Building Regulations Part L, basically. So we've got something called the BREL. So this is a new adaptation from what's called a SAP calculation. SAP calculations stand for Standard Assessment Procedure, and there was when I joined my dad in the business in the beginning, when 2014, the government introduced an amendment of Part L, which meant that was going to affect the carbon emissions and the footprint that building has on the environment. So there's targets. Those targets then capture all the thermal elements of a building and what the carbon footprint is, and they've set parameters where it has to be within the target results. And what they've done is, in 2014. So that's a design stage calculation. So what that does is it confirms all the insulation. So it confirms your floor insulation, you build up your wall insulation, And what they did was they increased they told everybody that the U values, which is the thermal value of the structure, they said that we need to improve the U values and we need to meet this now, which then affects the building fabric. So a builder's been building, say, 100 mil cavity. Well, that's increased to 150 mil in the recent changes again. So we had another improvement on the SAP calculations. I can't actually remember it wasn't really too much onerous on the cavity walls back in the 2014 amendment. It was more to do with the air test. So when a new build house has been built and finished, we have to go and do an air test on it to make sure there's no holes everywhere. And it has to come within that score of a target score, which again, it's affected sign off. It's affected developers. If you're not helping advise them early on of the key leakage areas and issuing them, so all of these designs, it's not just a box. You have to actually follow the specification. So there's been a lot of buildings that don't follow the specification, and essentially then they come back. Now this criminal law is in place. If you built a building and you're the principal contractor and you decided to use a different material, you're criminally liable. If you've signed that declaration and it should be another material because you've gone for a cost saving, and this is the reality of what some builders do. At the end of the day, they might be building for a customer or they might be doing it for themselves, and what they want the minimum build costs. We're not saying cut corners, but what we're saying is we need to cap. They're not allowing you to get away with that. They're closing every loophole out. I mean, when we was on site inspecting, we make sure that it is the product that it's on the SAP specification. What they're doing now, so the previous changes would dictate the heating of a building. We used to have gas boiler, which was good on the SAP calculation, but now they've changed the way that they capture the carbon emissions. They've basically said they want to phase gas out. Too much greenhouse gases, want to get rid of it. So we're going to go for air source heat pump. It was kind of ironic because, you couldn't have an electric boiler under the old SAP calculation without it failing, because they said that all the electric we were generating was coming from coal burning and stuff like that, So now that conversation, now that's obviously changed. It's kind of flipped it around. Everyone who wants to have gas now, they're struggling to get it to comply. They have to have solar PV on the roof as a renewable energy. So what they're making you do is compensate for what they don't want you to have, But the new thing that they've just implemented under the recent changes, which came into effect 2022, it means that you now have to photograph and you have to have time-stamped photos of the key areas that you need to capture evidence of the building. So that will be floor insulation, the perimeter upstand, different junctions of building, to confirm that is the exact product. So it's actually verifying the construction specification through a real evidence, time-stamped, geotagged to the site. So it can't be altered. You can't get around that. And what people are finding is, what we're finding is now is that there's a big problem with there's too much that builders have to do. They can't do it all. They forget. They're more interested in, well, is my labourer going to be on site? Is my brickwork gang going to be, whatever they're coordinating. They're busy ordering materials. They're busy building the project. They don't understand all this. So what we try and do is, we're your consultancy that can support you, identify what you need to do, tell you up front how this is going to affect the building. And if none of those design services are passing, you have, if none of them design services are passing, then it's going to come back and be a problem. And the builder needs to understand that says fail. You can't get the checkbook out and think that's just going to go away. And in respect, there's a particular area at the moment, like overheating assessment. So there's two different models. I mean, it's really affecting bungalows with ground floor bedrooms because of security. So on one hand, they say, well, we can't have the bedroom windows on the latch, or well, we can't have them open at night because someone might break in because it's a bedroom, it's a ground floor bungalow. You know, and if it's failing and people aren't understanding how that's going to affect the building at the end, it means you're not going to get a sign off. And what you're going to have to do, you have to put bars on the window so you can open the window, or you have to have a mechanical ventilation system to maintain the ventilation flow. You know, so what we do, we advise on all these parts at the beginning, which does affect the price of a building. It affects, you know, because you've got clients that they want that extra level of, they want that information from us if they want to build something more firmly efficient. You know, we just say fabric first. You know, but there's other areas of building regulations that are misunderstood as well, because when a new regulation comes into force, it doesn't necessarily mean it affects the project that you're working on straight away. So there's a couple of areas. If a few people that are watching this or signed up to this now that want to know a bit more about, you know, the regulations and how they might affect current projects, so you know they can certainly feel free to reach out. So what I'm going to mention is one about commencement on site. So let's take, for example, you've got planning permission. You haven't got the budget to build it all yet, but you've got planning permission. You've got everything designed in accordance with the current building regulations, but you're not going to look to start. Maybe you just think, well, I'm just going to leave it a bit longer. I've got 3 years to do the building. I'm not going to worry about it. But guess what? If the regulations change while you're preparing to build, and you just crack on without understanding that that's going to now affect your project, then it's going to completely change all the build costs. Because, you know, if it don't comply, there's a reason why it don't comply. Let's say if it's the fabric of a building. But yeah, what I was just going to say was about finishing the project at 15%. So what they've said under the changes is they said that under Part L, they said, look, if you want to lock in your property to the current regulations, say the thermal ones, you need to be 15% complete. But I think that's all of the regulations actually. Yeah. So if you finish the floor, so if you put the foundations in, you get it to the block and beam on, and you leave it there, then I would say that's your 15% locked in. So what that means is you're not only just locked in for the planning, you can just shelve it and you can just leave it. You're also locked in for your building regulations. So that won't change. Whereas if you just put the foundations in, right, and then you come back, say, 2 years later to start the main construction, that main construction, those drawings that you might have been working off before, they may not comply because the regulations that came in affecting the thermal elements, or could be fire safety, you might be staircases that are affecting it. So I think that, you know, getting started, well, being aware of regulation changes that can affect your building and affect your budget. I mean, you know, it could throw it out the window. So the next changes that are coming in 2027 under Part L, you know, they're going to be having solar panels as mandatory for every new build dwelling, stuff like that. So, you know, I think it's important that people that are in the construction industry that are doing building projects familiarise themselves with the new changes that are going to come in that may impact, may impact the project and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned about sort of gas boilers versus electric boilers, and obviously solar panels coming in. Adrian asked quite an interesting question, and then I want to take you on to the building safety levy as well, because that's obviously coming up in October. Adrian asked, Ben, but from your view, what are some of the mistakes do you see when renewable technologies are not considered early enough in design or planning? Is there any issues that they should be considering?
Well, I think the planning is important, because I think there's got to be there will be some areas that you need to consult the planners to make sure that, you know, you're okay with the installation on maybe a listed building or conservation area. They might not want it, but the main thing I think is structural integrity of the roof. So if you're not getting a structural engineer check based on the solar installation, then you're leaving yourself that you know it's a problem. So there needs to be a soft check, structural engineer wise, on the roof before application. And then there's also, well, what was the question? So it was considered early enough in design and planning. What are the mistakes you see when renewable technologies are not considered? Well, I think that you're gonna have an ugly solution. So let's say the SAP calculations, which are a design stage SAP calculation, they are supposed to be provided at design stage before you start. And this is what's going to be coming down the road very fast for developers. That maybe because people used to try and join it all up at the end and get a design and as built and just say this is the spec, rah rah rah. It's not gonna cut the chase. You align all this at the beginning. Your design SAP then locks in the specification and it tells you how much solar you've got to get, what you've got to put in. So if you're not aware of that and you get to the end of the project and you built a really nice property and then you've got to put some pretty nasty looking on roof solar panels, then it's a bit of a mess up, and it's not something that you want, on a £500,000 house. You want it to be an in roof nice system. But yeah, the main thing is people not reading the paperwork is where the mistakes go.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I would never have considered that you would need a structural engineer just for looking at solar panels on the roof, but it makes complete sense when you think about it, particularly when you're looking at some of the older properties that really the structure of the roof might not be set up for putting that additional weight on there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that at the end of the day, it's important because you are putting something that's got weight on the roof. Assessing whether that's fit for purpose, because you've also got snow load as well that people don't think about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, there's a few houses round by me that don't have that problem, but that's a story for another time.
Well,
Um,
just before that, I wanted to just go back to that Building Safety Act, how it affects high risk buildings.
yeah,
So the terminology is HRB. So anything that's 7-story or 18 meters and above would be application to the building safety regulator directly. So it's a different process to dealing with, a registered building control approver or a local authority building control service. It's actually the government, it's the building safety regulator. So that affects. So even if you're doing the ground floor of an 18 meters plus or a 7-story building, you're still going to be under the building safety regulator for application. So projects that are below 7 stories and below 18 meters, they are, you can come to us, or you can go to a private company, or you can go to local authority. So the local authority, they offer a cheaper service because it's non-for-profit, but they also, they have their problems there in terms of, it varies across the board with local authority service. One authority can be fantastic, the other one you might not get a response for weeks. So when you appoint a private person, they are worth a bit more money because you can get hold of them and they turn up on site. They don't, and they've got to make a profit, haven't they? So they're not
mm,
funded by the taxpayer. But yeah, the thing around the building application and the regulations, how they affect different types of projects. And like I say, the client needs to understand that they need to appoint these duty holders. You need to, the duty holders would be your principal designer and your principal contractor, and they need to be competent. That's another big thing that's going on in the sector at the moment about competency. But yet builders are still able to build without even being without having any regulation. They're not regulated.
you really hit the nail on the head is that when you sort of put your the principal designer or the principal individual on site. It's about having that accountability and having that one person responsible, because as you say, the average builder can't retain all that information about the various moving parts of the development in order to make sure that it's fully compliant, and selecting those people that are knowledgeable, and that's their sole responsibility, and then obviously working with you guys to ensure that all areas are being hit. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a very different world that we're in, but I mean, it's I had a meeting with Rich and David this afternoon about some projects that we're building, and that's in the tech space, not in the the property space. And if we hadn't had David there he managed to actually find a massive issue that me and Richard completely overlooked, and it was
Yeah.
so obvious, it was staring us in the face, but we just didn't notice it. And I guess once you've got, your three principal guys on site, and then obviously working with yourselves, Ben,
Yeah.
it's ensuring that all those uh
Well, the sweet spot for me, Chris, the sweet spot for me with my business is that me and my dad, that we're working together, and we've got Dom as well. But in terms of how we support an SME supply chain, so there's a lot of big corporates out there that are delivering services as a regulator that aren't even really supposed to be offering other services as in-house. They're in-house services. They're not farmed out. They're doing design work whilst they're doing building regulation work, and it's a conflict of interest and something that Dame Judy Hackett has said that it needs to be cut out. So if you're there, you need to be independent as a building inspector. You
yeah.
can't be involved in design work as a company. But again, that's something that seems to be happening. But the key thing is for me is, we are not really a monopoly like that. We're not a big corporate business. We're a family-run business that value relationships. We've built on them relationships over years, and the people that are connected to our business are fantastic. They're small businesses themselves. Okay, we've got a couple of building product suppliers that are big businesses, but that's because we've offered cost-effective solutions to our customers. But it also means that we can fully get that full building appraisal. So if I get involved in a roof truss or a block and beam floor, or we do solar supply as well. And the reason we've offered that, the reason we've partnered with the right people to deliver a cost-effective service is, again, making sure that full appraisal is here, and it's worked. The model's worked really well. We've got a discounted supply chain in place, but yeah, the main sweet spot for me is supporting SME supply chain businesses that are getting bashed by big corporates, and we need to look after that. We need to protect that. We need to bear in mind that they are businesses. And what the irony for me is that some of the training partners that actually train and accredit these individual people to get where they need to get to deliver the service they want to offer, they then offer that. They're going into that space. So a lot of these big corporates, they're involved in training, they're involved in regulation, they're involved in testing, they're involved in design. They're actually training the individual people to go out and do micro businesses. But how are these micro businesses even going to get any work if it's all under one monopoly? So I think that the monopolistic practices that are going on in construction is something that is a growing problem, and something that we don't fall into that category because we've got an SME supply chain. Our suppliers are paid up front, and they don't all get paid up front because of the natural behaviour of the supplier. They like to deliver a report and then say, there's the invoice. But our portal system is all generated around, I look at it as a football team. We've got depth in the squad, and as we grow our business, we need to have more people on the bench. We're not a compare the market. We don't go down that road, because we're about service, relationship, supporting each other. And if I can offer a package discount to a customer for all those services, that's another natural human instinct or behavior. You want a deal. It's just part of the process. So the whole point with the one-stop shop, my business is basically like ordering a pizza. You can pick and choose what you want, and then we deliver it, and we give you a discount when you get to the end. So if you picked what you want, we'll package up a quote, and then we'll offer you a package discount because we're fair, and because it's commercially it works. We offer referral fees as well to people that we're supporting, architects. And if they can earn a little commission out of that service, and it's not even about the money. A lot of people don't care about that. They just want the right people to deliver the services for their client, and that gives them great feedback, a positive reflection on them as a business. So what we are is, we're complementary to lots of different businesses. We're complementary to a building contractor. We're complementary to an architect, a carpenter, anybody really that's doing a construction project, and even big businesses that have already got experience in national house builders. It's hard to get involved with them because they're a different kettle of fish to what we are, and we sit in the market where we serve customers really generally up to about 25. Not many people do developments of 25 units. There's a lot of the stuff we do is your pockets of land, your ones, your twos, your four, up to 10 really. We do conversion projects, but yeah, we're here to help, and I think that the more people get talking about these subject areas, it's not don't be daunted by it, but at the end of the day, if it is daunting to you and you think, well, actually, you can understand, well, actually you want to explore how we operate, how our work can benefit you. You're not only getting a one-stop shop, you're getting great services that are cost engineered, added value, and it's about time. Everybody on my portal system has to work to a traffic light system. So, if it goes red after 5 days, you're late on delivering your quote. And there's a reason why they're late on delivering the quote. It's generally because the supplier can't quote based on the lack of information that we have to quote off. So it's all about people in construction. Time is massive. Time is huge. You can get paid double money if you can deliver a report tomorrow and not next week, and people pay that.
Yeah.
So, but what we do is we coordinate. We package it all with time, cost, and delivery.
Well, Ben, we're almost out of time. So before we hit the hour mark, guys, if you've got any questions for Ben, please do put them in the chat, and like Adrian, we'll get them read out for you, and see what we can put to Ben. But Ben, could you just sort of summarise for us what the Building Safety Act means, and what people should be diligent of? And if you could sort of explain a little bit about what the building safety levy is coming in October,
Yeah.
that would be amazing.
So just to try and summarise it, because it's something that people are still trying to get to grips with. But essentially, it came into force in 2022, and the reason that it came into force is to get accountable people. So they created they created duty holder roles, a role. Okay. So the implementation of the Building Safety Act was to predominantly focus towards high risk buildings, because high risk buildings occupy a lot of people. And what we've seen with Grenfell and the tragedy there, this is the reason of the implementation of the BSR, because there was failings and there's also no accountability. So that's the main focus point. It's about making people criminally liable across every building project. It doesn't just affect high risk buildings, it affects a single story extension. So there's an important part is understanding the law, understanding that you've appointed those people. So the client the client, I don't want to rock the boat here, but the client, they just hold their hands up and go, well, I don't know. Well, hang on a minute. You know what the building price was because you've gone for the cheapest quote. So what you've done is you've gone for the cheapest price. You've appointed somebody that, without really doing your due diligence, checking that their work is good work, checking that their experience is good. Now you've got these potential snowball effect that comes in. So the client is responsible for onboarding the right duty holders and making sure that they confirm that at the beginning. So if someone comes to me with a construction project now, in particular, the builder will come to me because I support the builder, or the architect will recommend us as a compliance coordinator with whatever they need or services that we offer, pick and choose. And the first conversation I'm having with them is, right, do you understand the Building Safety Act? And that's the first question. That's the first thing. So we all have a responsibility now to help working together. So it's teamwork. It's not, if you do it properly, you build properly, you won't have a problem because you've got the right people checking it. You've got the right design. It's regulated. It's not regulated, but it's compliant with the current building regulations. And then you're going to have a nice, smooth journey. But the thing that's catching people out at the moment is, in particular, domestic projects, they're an absolute pain. The reason they're a pain is because I want an extension, I want to move it, I want to move in. or I'm building a new house and I want to move in. They don't really need, some of them, they don't really think too much about the paperwork until it becomes a problem. So, oh, I need to get refinance, or I want to get a mortgage. Well, if you haven't got a building control certificate, then you're in a bit of a sticky wicket. So the issue that we're finding under the change of the Building Safety Act are the compliance declarations from the duty holder people. So that would be the architect or the principal designer and the principal contractor and the client. So the client needs to sign their bit, and it needs to be wet signature. So I would give a little bit of advice to anyone who's doing building control, anyone who's doing building projects that have building control in the current time, is make sure, if you can, get your compliance declarations wet signatured before the building inspector comes and does the final inspection, or while he's there. If you're happy that everything's done, because the problem we're getting is it's paperwork, and I think the digital pathway is much better for document management, which is why our business is quite good in terms of having everything there in a system. But this has always been a problem when it comes to paperwork at the end of a building project. The electrical test certificate, where is it? How long is it going to take before I can get that? The building regulation firm, they won't be able to sign it off without the certificate. So same as a gas safety certificate. So what we're finding now is they've created another bit of paperwork, which is called compliance declarations. So what that is a signature, wet, dated. I mean, sooner or later, it will probably be on an app where you have to put your own face in, and it'll be facial recognition. And I think it should be. I think that at the moment, the current way that it's being completed, it's crazy. I mean, they're more bothered about geotagging and Braille evidence on Part L, which is capturing specific photos geotagged, but they're not even really got they've not got a robust system in place for verification, and it could be frauded. It could be anyone's name. Some people go, well, I don't want to pay the architect. There's been a lot of hesitation with architects. Well, I've got no PI for that. I've got no insurance for being a principal designer. Or some people are doing the principal design and they've got no competence. They've got no history. Again, so I think that there needs to be, I think we're going to see that change coming soon, because it's a problem. I mean, why do all of this and then allow the actual duty holder declarations to not be legit, verified? Because it could be anyone. And what we're finding at the moment is that building projects, they're struggling to get signed off because of that little bit of paperwork. So I think for everyone who's in the chat or everyone who's watching, I think that's probably a good bit of advice at the moment is try and get all your compliance declarations as a client yourself, rather than a consultancy trying to get the pieces together. Because it's not, if you can align that at the end of the project. So let's say, who the duty holders are at the beginning, you get your compliance declarations at the end, and then making sure that it's available for the building inspector when he comes to do a final inspection, because he can just take a photo of it there. He's got it then, rather than waiting on 4 different parties to send, the emails back, scanning it in and stuff like that. But I do think that the building safety regulator are going to probably look at changing that. But again, it's obviously going down the same pathway as, as our own digital ID sort of kind of thing that the government want to implement as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what a cracking piece of advice to end on, Ben. Thank you so much for this afternoon. I really, really appreciate it, mate. And you've really, really gone into quite a bit of detail there that I think is going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to get hold of you?
Well, they can find me on my email. I'll pop it in on the chat, ben@onestopconsult.co.uk. You can get us online on the website. You can get through to us pretty good. And I'm always here to help. And a lot of the work that I do never lands on an invoice. So when people employ us, we're not project managers. We just coordinate, and we offer that in-house expertise, on-site, boots on the ground. And a lot of what we do is it really is added value. We don't take a percentage of your build costs. We don't charge you hidden costs. What we are exactly what we say on the tin. And yeah, we've got real good capability. We're UK wide. We've got a very robust supply chain in place, and we're actually looking to partner with new suppliers as well. So people that are listening that might be interested in exploring some of our supplier list, that's also of that's also open to us, because we're always open to collaborate with businesses. We can add you into our offerings if it makes sense to do so. And we also have a referral system in place, where you can refer and earn, and those projects are locked in. So don't feel as though we're going to take any of your work away if you're an architect, for example, because those clients are locked into what you do. You can pick and choose what we offer. You can put that to your client, and they're locked in on our system for repeat business as well, which is important. And there's contracts in place. So what we don't do, we don't tread on your toes. And that's what's always been important to me within this business, is that I work with people, and I'm not here to take away, anyone else's role within a business if they've been doing that for a long time, because relationships are the foundation of businesses. If I'm working with an architect who's already got a relationship with a structural engineer, then that stays there. It's only when the structural engineer lets them down, or they can't deliver a project on time, or they've made a mistake, that obviously we can fill that void. But yeah, we're really a collaborative business, and obviously you can tap into discounts. We've got 5-star reviews, so feel free to reach out, anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't recommend them enough. And Ben, it's been such an honor to have you on as your first public speaking engagement. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely smashed it, mate. And I think looking at the feedback coming in the chat, people have really enjoyed it. So yes, guys, we'll be back next week with another webinar. But if you want to check out Ben, please do drop him an email. Or alternatively, Ben and Stephen and Dom are all in UK Homes Network, and Ben, you're quite the regular poster, so people can reach out to you via the platform if they want to. But
Good
yeah,
point there, Chris. Good point there, because the stuff that we're also sharing in your platform is just trying to help people, informative advice, and it doesn't cost anything, because a lot of people, they don't realize they've got to have certain things in place to actually get a spade in the ground, But yeah, but
absolutely.
it's a great platform what you've got there, Chris, and it's good to be. It's even better to be able to run that alongside your normal LinkedIn, but actually have a growing community, and that's what it's all about. I think hats off to you, and thanks for setting it up and doing what you're doing, because there's a massive there's a massive there's a big hole there. There's a big void that people want to be. They want to be heard. They want to connect. And I think you've really brought the industry together in such a way where it's not just about sponsors and big corporate dues. It's actually look at what you're doing with the community. I think while widening that into your sort of charitable side of stuff that you're going to be growing in that sphere as well. I think everyone wants to help each other. And we're so pleased to be part of your business and part of a growing community. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, mate. Like, your support has been incredible, and we're so lucky to have you on board. And yeah, like you say, it's all about sort of raising the voices of the industry where the sort of social media algorithms don't pick them up, and that's what we're all about.
Well, if
Um,
we ever have another COVID again, at least we can jump on that app, and we can, I don't think we'll be having a dinner party at Buckingham Palace, but but at least we've got somewhere to go to connect, and all feel the pain.
Mate, I obviously don't want people to get unwell by any stretch of the imagination, but I tell you what, a lockdown would make me a billionaire overnight.
Well,
So
don't
yeah.
snooze, don't sneeze too hard on that subject, will you?
Oh no! Occasionally, I'll see a headline from the Daily Mail about a cruise ship and a lockdown, and my
Yeah,
eyebrow going
yeah.
like that. So, yeah, but never mind. Anyway, guys, thank you very, very much. Please do share your posts and let us know how Ben got on this afternoon. If you want to reach out to him in the platform, please do, and we will be back with you next week with another webinar, which we're very much looking forward to. We will definitely have Ben on again in the near future. And yeah, if you want to catch him at any of our events, I'm sure Ben will be exhibiting at Leeds and London. So can't wait to see him there.
Brilliant.
Thank you guys. Have a lovely rest of your week, and we'll catch you all very soon.